She just,
I mean, the gossiping going on right now, I'm sorry that they don't get to listen to the pre. We are just going at it.
we have the best time. Oh
We
my
really
God.
do.
You should start another podcast called The Gossip Girls.
Just going like underground. Really. Well, you know why? This is how it's been since I met you, Batsheva. We just go right there.
Absolutely. There's certain people, kindred spirits, you just go right there.
I like it also, like neither one of us has much time except for to go right there. So we were just talking about someone we both had almost worked with. Okay. You don't need to hear about that because we do need to listen. If people talking about what you're really craving are not going to bring a certified sex therapist onto their show, I do not know what they're going to talk about. I just want to hear everything about you and I want to hear everything you think. But this is what my one thought was. And then I probably won't talk for the whole podcast. Isn't that hilarious? Of course I will. Here's my one thought. When I'm talking about eating disorders, relationship with food, although in fairness, what you're craving goes the whole, spectrum of what we're really craving. My main concept to people after we talk about if there's like specific addictions, sugar, flour, binging is like, how are you nurturing and how are you nourishing yourself, right? Like outside of food. And if we ain't talking about sex, I mean, I think probably the same is in like, if this is the language you would use, like dysfunction with sex. So talk us through, link it a little bit to food. You have your own stuff with food. Who are you? You're like my friend. Sorry, y'all. I sometimes just think you're all with me all the time. This is my friend Batsheva Marcus. Who are you? Give us just a snippet of why we love you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love you too. All of you who are listening. So, yes, I'm Batsheva Marcus and I'm a sex therapist, but I'm a very specific kind of sex therapist. I'm a medical sex therapist. So that means that I really pioneered in the country bridging the physiological and the psychological, like a real full biopsychosocial approach, the same way we need it with eating and food, understanding like what the hormones are doing, what making you want to eat, what emotions are doing, what the people in your life are doing, all of
those. It's not so moral, right? There's not like, oh, I'm just so screwed up around sex.
So that's what I was about to say, that the same sense of shame, of guilt, of I'm not normal, about everybody else has it together and I don't. Those are the same exact things that people struggle with when it comes to sex and when it comes to food and eating. So that is really where I go. And just so you have like some technicalities about me, I have 3 masters and a PhD. You
know what my favorite thing you've said so far? I love so many things about you, but my favorite thing about you is that you say things like, I pioneered it. Like I need to be a lot. We all like, before we even get to the sex stuff.
Was that obnoxious?
Was that more like Batsheva?
Was that a little obnoxious? It's like true. I wrote the book on it.
No, I think it's like the whole problem. Like I think it's 3/4 of the problem with like women not being able to own their stuff. I'm gonna start owning my stuff more, just on that sentence.
You do own your stuff. And the truth is, trust me, there's plenty of stuff I don't own. So we could talk about that afterwards. But I wrote a book called Sex Points, Reclaim Your Sex Life with the Revolutionary Multi-Point System. It is basically the first book out there that says this is not all in your head. If you have low desire, it is not necessarily because of your relationship. It may have issues in your relationship. It may be affecting your relationship, but it isn't necessarily because of your relationship. And there shouldn't be the shame and the guilt and the self-flagellation that we have on so many areas. Like I am so done with women blaming themselves.
Oh, me too.
Molly, I am so done.
I'm so over it.
Exactly. So yes. So anyway, I ran the largest sexual health center in the United States for 25 years. I started it. I ran it for 25 years. And I recently left and in private practice. I'm on social media a lot. We can talk about that later. And that pretty much sums up who I am, I think.
But I really love it. It's like, I am so over it too, because I think that a lot of times, and probably as a function of our relationship with our bodies and sex and food and the culture that comes with it, I think we are so susceptible to victim shaming, right? We are so, because I know this about diet culture, we are so susceptible to buying somebody who's usually not in any way qualified to say this to us, saying you're the problem, try harder. There's something wrong with you.
So the other thing about me, you made a little reference to, is that I lost 100 pounds. So I'm like in the, whatever. I had bariatric surgery 3 years ago. We could talk about that. I felt like for me, it gave me a huge lifeline, and it was something I needed to do as to add into the years and years of health at every size kind of approach, cutting out simple carbs, which I loved your book. I loved your book. And I think, us understanding sugars and our body's attunement to sugar and our body's reactions to simple sugars is like, and the problem is, and this I'll say all the time, and then I will shut up for a minute or two, is that, I think I'm one of the most determined and disciplined women I know.
I would second that.
And I will say, thank you, Molly.
Relentless,
and I would say
in the best way possible.
5 years ago, I never would have owned that, because you can't be 100 pounds overweight and say, I am a disciplined person, and have people not look at you like you're crazy. Yeah. Like, there's so much judgment in our society that no matter how much you are like, the bottom line is, I didn't even totally trust myself when I had this extra weight on, even though, do you know what I'm saying?
I know from myself, and I know from people I've treated. I mean, this is really where the morality of the biology of obesity comes in. It's so fascinating, and the amount of high-powered, brilliant people I know that make their food and weight disorders completely moral. Like, I'm not allowed to be brilliant if I'm holding on to this weight. And I think there's a piece too where how much we let society dictate what we're worth. Like, I can't wear this bathing suit. I do think, I'm very hopeless about the current state of our country, but I do think in this one particular way we're making strides, which is being on a beach now versus like when I weighed 325 pounds is a different venture. I think part of this body positivity movement is really freeing for us.
So I think you're right. It's a small part of society. Like, I think a little bit we live in a sort of a lovely part of society, which is a little more open.
Well, I live in the South now. Okay.
All right. You. So yes, I don't, so you tell me, but anyway,
let me tell you, women in the South are very comfortable with their bodies. Oh my God. So I just aspire.
Okay. So whatever it is, I think that there's absolutely some truth to the fact, or a lot of truth to the fact, that we let society kind of make us feel a certain way about ourselves. But to be fair, Molly, like, as somebody who was super successful and super like thoughtful about this and fighting against it every single day, it is nigh impossible not to let society's judgment.
And I'm like, listen, I
yeah,
agree
no,
with that.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we, because I feel like in a certain way, sometimes women end up blaming themselves doubly. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, not only am I feeling crappy about myself because, am I allowed to say crappy on here?
Say fuck, like you do you.
Okay,
you know
perfect.
I mean?
Okay, good. That's good.
Just be authentic. So, authenticity is our love language here on What You're Craving. So we're here for it.
Authenticity is what we're craving.
Oh, turn it right there, my friend. It really is, isn't it?
Totally.
I think that's why people like me. I just like it to feel like we're out to lunch. I want whoever's listening to feel like, oh, I'm going to lunch with Sheva and Molly today.
Yeah, exactly.
This is literally what it sounds like when we're on the phone, if it makes you feel better.
So, I think there's this double whammy. Like, on the one hand, I'm blaming myself because I'm letting society sort of dictate how I'm feeling about myself. And on the other hand, like, how could I possibly not when I'm facing society every day, all day long?
I love that.
So,
and I think it's, really dialectic. Like, I think if there's two opposing ideas that are completely true, and that it's almost impossible not to be susceptible to the societal norms, and we need to not be susceptible to the societal norms. And there's a middle path in there somewhere.
And that's true about food and eating, and that's true about sex.
Let's get to the sex, baby. Okay. I love I'm such a 90s baby. Like, I just want to be singing that song over and over. I'm not going to, but yeah, like, so talk us through, like, why is there such stigmas around women and sex, and I think in body, and what have you experienced in your practice and in yourself with all of this?
So I think there's a couple of myths that we walk around with that are terrible myths that get locked into us and that we sort of are stuck with. And one of them is that sex is, stagnant, basically, that you kind of learn how to have sex, and that, like, you start having sex, it works well for you, or you struggle with it a little bit, whatever it is, you kind of figure it out. And that will be your sex life for the rest of your life. That your sex life is just like on autopilot. For the way you have sex when you're 18 or 17 or 22 is the way you're going to have sex for the rest of your life. That myth is so crippling to people. I'll tell you why, because nothing could be further from the truth. Your sex life is just not static. It changes constantly. The same way if you had the same exercise plan from when you were 18 until you were 60, like it would be ridiculous, right? It has to shift. So your sex life is going to change because, you know what, your sex life is going to change because your health profile changes, your hormonal profile changes. It's going to change because your relationship status changes, because you may have children or not have children, because you're using your brain or you're not using your brain in certain ways, because you've incorporated, because your partner's having health issues. You know what I mean? That it is constant. And so you're going to hit little road bumps, and road bumps are perfectly normal. But the problem is if you have this idea, oh, I should be having sex the way I was when I was 18. So my desire looks different today. And so therefore it's not there. So something's the matter. So I'm just going to ignore the problem. Or I'm not wet like I used to get when I was 18, right? So it hurts. And so like something's wrong with me. So I'm just going to like avoid sex. Or my partner is having trouble keeping an erection, so he must not love me, or it must be me, or I'm just, it's extra 5 pounds I gained, or whatever it is. So
I want to get to that one really badly. Yes. I want to get to this idea.
Let me just finish. I just want to finish that thought. And then, yes, okay. I just want to say,
finish. That's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Love it. The more you realize that your sex life is not static, that it is a constantly evolving, changing, living, breathing thing, the better you're going to be at bumping up and down like those little road bumps and keeping your sex life alive and vibrant for hopefully your whole life. And that's until you're 70 or 80 and not longer. Okay. Now I'm sorry.
P.S. We would say the same exact thing about your relationship with food. I just want to put that out there. It's just like good ideas run across the board. Let's talk about the person who's listening who says things like, well, I put on 100 pounds. So either I'm not feeling sexual, I don't feel like I deserve having sex, my partner isn't attracted to me. Like, why is it important to have some kind of healthy sex life, maybe even without a partner? Why is that so important for us as humans? And B, what do you say to all of this body stuff with sex? Like, how do you help us with that, friend?
So first of all, I love, Molly, that you said with or without a partner, because I believe strongly in a sex life, whether you're with somebody or whether you're not.
Me too, friend. I am being reliant on any other human beings to get what I need.
Sex,
you know what I'm
sex
saying?
With yourself can be the best sex. When you're in the mood, you know what you want. You don't, there's a lot of good sex to be had.
I just think honestly, I think this about anything in life. Like, if you're reliant on one person for something, you're in a lot of trouble. Like that's been just across the board, my experience. It doesn't mean you can't rely on somebody. I have amazing friends. I've had amazing partners in my life, but putting all your eggs in one basket ain't a good way to live. It's just not. Unless it's with yourself. Because
right, exactly.
Molly, I'm a good, reliable friend to myself.
Right. But I'm an IFS therapist, right? Internal family systems. So I think there's a lot of eggs in that basket. You've got
a lot. Molly is more than just Molly.
Yes, there's many Molly.
All of my parts. I love internal family systems. We had another therapist on, my friend Adrienne. She's great. She's a great IFS is so interesting. If I could do it again, I might be an IFS therapist.
You can still do it again, but you're busy. Okay. So wait, I don't even remember what the original question was.
My question was this, like, what about people listening who probably, by the way, didn't even turn on this podcast? So like, oh, not me. I can't have sex. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. I hate myself. Okay. My husband won't be attracted to me. Like, first of all, why is it important? Like, let's not even get into the myths there. But like, why is it so important for us to...
So I always say to people, I did not go into this field because I'm so fascinated with body part A going into body part B or not. Like, that is interesting to me, but not that super interesting. What's interesting to me is what sexuality does to us as people in terms of making us feel alive, vibrant, connected to the world, connected to our partner. And when you talk to a woman who at one time had a sex drive and doesn't have one anymore, you can see it. She said, I feel like a part of me is missing, right? And women who have never had any kind of sexual life will often feel like they're listening to other people and they sort of feel like they're missing something significant in their lives. Now, look, if you're somebody who's really not interested in sex, you've made a decision not to be interested in sex, all power to you. I don't want to be on here saying everybody has to be interested in sex.
I would like for that person to keep an open mind with what we're talking about.
I would like that person to give them, okay, fine. They can make it on mine. They can make an appointment with me. We can discuss it. But
also, Sheva, let me ask you a quick question on my first question, which is this. Listen, I believe in like energy. I'm a shaman. Like I believe in the energy systems. And what I know to be true about the sacral chakra, which is where your sexual organs live, it's also where your femininity lives, masculinity, and also where your creativity lives. And that is why I think at least being in touch, not neutral, having some kind of relationship with sex. Maybe if you've made this decision that you're neutral or something, I don't know, but just to me, it's so incomplete. And it really may be, honestly, like when we think about what you're craving, it may be that you're so shut off from this part of yourself that maybe if you get in a different relationship with this, you won't feel the need to be drinking too much or eating too much. What if that was true? Could you imagine?
Yeah. So I think that there are people where that is true. Like you definitely have people who are just feeling so disconnected from their sexual creative energy that they're turning to all kinds of other addictions. I think that is 100% the case. I just want to be sensitive to the fact that, like, despite the fact that I've made my entire life doing this because I feel passionately about it, I don't want to be judgmental of people who
don't
decide,
fragilize on the show, though. Okay, fragilize, make people believe they're fragile.
Fair enough.
Turn us off. So we're for a certain kind. Me and Sheva.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so having said that, I think that sex is critically important on two levels. One, on your own level, feeling all the things you just said, Molly, your creativity, your center in the universe, like your place, your happiness, my tagline is the pleasure of being alive. It's like, there's pleasure in life and needing to have the pleasure. Okay. The second thing is, I do think it's so important to relationships. Like, I feel like it's not that it's not possible for relationships to exist without sex, but I just see the difference in relationships without sex. They're less playful, they're less fun, they're less connected, they're less joyous. I mean, that's, I think of sex as the dessert, if you'll pardon my saying so.
No, because I think this is part of the problem is that we're craving dessert when really we might be craving having a sexual desire that we're suppressing.
Right. So I think having a sex drive is super important. And, I just think that people who aren't connected to their sexuality in a good way are just happier, move through the world happier and more connected. Yeah. So that was question number one. Now, question number two was, what do you do if you're walking around a body that's larger than you'd like, and you feel like you can't have sex because of it? And believe me, oh my God, if I see that all the time.
And by the way, like, I subscribed to that for lots of years. Like, I will.
Yes. So
when you were in your larger body, I guess, did you have that conflict, or you were just like?
So I happen to be extremely either lucky or whatever. And it's so funny, Molly, because I'm pretty careful never to talk about my own personal sex life, because I just don't think it's helpful for people. But I will say, what?
I'm always interested in your personal stuff.
Oh, yeah. But I will say, I'm married. I'll be married 40 years in another year. I know, crazy, right? Got married when I was 12. And my husband always thought I was just beautiful. And he was always so demonstrative and articulate about it. But that doesn't mean that I still didn't feel uncomfortable. But when you're with a regular partner, when you're doing work on body acceptance, when you're doing a lot of work on body acceptance, and you have a partner who is so obviously taking pleasure in your body, then it makes it a lot easier. So I have to say that. But I also want to say that so many women I've seen, and this is fascinating to me, although it's so obvious, it shouldn't be fascinating, but it's fascinating, feel terrible about their bodies, even though their partners love their bodies. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I had this one client who, she said, I hate my stomach. It looks like jelly, She said, and my partner, he gets so turned on when he's like jiggling, like the jiggles. He loves the jiggles of my belly. Like, I have seen, honestly, Molly, almost no correlation between good sex lives and those skinny, hot women. Like, you look at these women who you think are going to be super hot, they present as hot, or they're very thin. So many of them do not have good sex lives. Like, you should not make the assumption that
they might be in their heads as much as.
There's a million reasons that they're going on. And I'll tell you something fascinating. the hormones are actually better often in the heavier women.
Mm.
Like your sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, those you may have more of when you're heavier. So often the heavier women have better libidos if they can just get out of their heads, you know? So, you know, my work with women is often like, you know, mirror work, talking to yourself work, moving away from criticizing yourself every day, all the time, to accepting your body, eventually loving your body, connecting to parts of your body that you really like, being able to lose yourself in the sexual experience. And if you're by yourself, you can do that if you work on it. And if you're with a partner, assuming you're not with a critical partner, and that's a whole other, and then we can talk about whether you should even be there.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, I'll be honest, that's always very hard for me as a therapist when somebody comes in and says, like, my husband says he's not attracted to me since I gained, you know, 10 pounds or 20 pounds. I just want to say, like, you tell him
to go fuck himself.
Yeah, right. And like, in other words, right. Or like, you tell him, like, you know what, you think you can do better? Goodbye. Do I say I could do better? Because believe me, there's a slew of people out there looking to have sex with you, even when you're bigger.
Especially when you're bigger. There's people who prefer that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I'm saying, yes, there are people who prefer that, but yes.
Well, what if we're like, what if there's people who are just, I mean, I don't think we need to get into how this happens, because honestly, that's, you and I really could just have like 18 podcasts, but like, what if you are completely shut down from the idea of having an orgasm, whether it's yourself or with someone else?
Okay.
Why do you need to reevaluate, and you struggle with eating and binging or restricting? Why would you say it's important to reconsider that idea?
So I probably have a slightly different perspective on what that means to be completely shut down from orgasm, right?
Tell me more.
So I think you need to separate the women who, and this goes back to, I'm sick of women blaming themselves. There are many women who can't have orgasms for very many physiological reasons that we're just not paying attention to, right?
Like what?
Like anti-anxiety medications, SSRIs, big birth control pills. Now, not every, I don't want anybody to say, oh my God, but birth control pills can really hamper our neurological responses. It could also be, as she gets older, she just needs more neurological stimulation, and like strong vibrators could be super helpful with that, right? But what happens is that women go down this rabbit hole. It's so funny. I wrote an article about this. It was called How I Misplaced My Orgasm in Synagogue and Found It There Again. So I know it's got, people liked it. It was on Medium. It was in Lilith magazine, I think. Because I went down this before I was a sex therapist. And the first time I went on Prozac, I stopped having orgasms, but I didn't realize, it was the early days of Prozac, and I didn't realize that was connected. And my first thought was, oh my God, my relationship must be in the toilet. Like, what the hell is going on? I must be angry at him. So, you know, we do these contortion acts again, about blaming themselves. So if you can't have an orgasm, or you've never had an orgasm, I need you to sort of think about this in a broader context. It may be because you're not letting yourself access pleasure. And then that would be really taking, are you knocking down the microphone?
No, I'm trying to have my microphone in a different space. Okay, sorry. No, I'm riveted. That's what it is.
Right. So if you're somebody who struggles with orgasm, before you go down I am horribly broken and I need to do 2 years of therapy for this, which really, honestly, you're hitting I feel like a good therapist can deal with a lot of these issues pretty efficiently. I don't know how to say that in a nicer way, but you spend 2 years talking about orgasm. I'm like, really, please get a refund. Okay.
Fair.
Yes. You know, so
analysis paralysis, right?
Analysis. Oh, that's great. I should know that. I never heard that before. That's amazing. Okay. Analysis paralysis. I would say you need to sort of, and this is what I tried to do in my book. It was sort of separate out, like, what situations can you have an orgasm? What situations can you not have an orgasm? Do you have a sense of what's going on? And let's look at the physiological underpinnings as well. And let's look at some of the things you may be able to do to turn that around before you go down this rabbit hole of, I am so broken.
I'm in love with this. That's in your first book, Sex Points, right? Your second book.
I don't have a second book.
Oh, why am I making things up today?
I don't know, but
okay. Sex Points. In your
Sex
book,
Points, my book,
your book, Sex Points, this is what we get to.
And I will say, I did my PhD dissertation on vibrators, women and vibrators, and it was 25 years ago. So it was before they were doing research on. This is one of the first pieces of research out there on. And I feel like vibrators are the most underused tool in women's sexual arsenals. Like they're so, I know, I'm afraid you're looking at me funny because you're thinking, what are you talking about? Every woman has a vibrator, but
no, I don't think that at all. I didn't have a vibrator till I was like, I swear to God, like 26. I had so much sex stuff, which I could obviously talk about in a different day, but like, I didn't have a vibrator. I think till I was like, I don't know, my 30s. Like I came to this stuff late, but I came in hot once I did. Once I realized that I could be in control of my own sexual, pleasure, it was like the whole gates opened, I swear.
So, and I'm going to tell you that there are women who go way longer than that without experience of vibrator, and women in relationships who somehow feel like the vibrator shouldn't, if they had a relationship, why do they need a vibrator? And the women who think that vibrators are those internal things that go into your vagina, which they can be, and that's fine, but that's not going to help you with your orgasm. But you need like something that looks like,
and that you have to have a part. I think that part of my belief system was that I had to have a partner in order to do it, and that really spiraled down.
Wait, in order to use a vibrator, or in order to
have an orgasm, I had to be with someone. I don't like. I hated part of it was. I think part of it was like really hating myself. And so like needing to get that pleasure from somebody else.
That was pre-vibrators, you're saying, or that was post?
And then finally my friend Stephanie bought me a vibrator and she said, enough is enough. You need to learn how to do this. And I did. And here we are.
Yeah. So, and there's some women who, and I talk to so many women about this because it's something they struggle with and we need to talk through, is the fact that they use a vibrator to have orgasms, and they have orgasms, they have great orgasms, but they somehow feel guilty using them with their partners, like while they're having sex with a partner. And I'm like, it's like, it's not, people are afraid it's not natural, but I'm like, my eyeglasses aren't natural either, but that doesn't mean I want to not see the sunset or walk into walls. Do you know what I mean? Like, so just because you're with a partner, like the partner can get with the program. Like you can have great sex with your partner with the vibrator and still have fabulous orgasms. So
I think this goes to, first of all, I love the idea of separating out like the music from the noise. Because I think it's across the board. Like, I don't know, even in social work school, they're like, medical first, right? And with food, I'm like the same way. Like a lot of people are trying to intuitively eat and they're addicted to sugar, right? So it's like, you can't get that done. I don't know. I had a boyfriend once who was on all this blood pressure medicine and he couldn't ejaculate, and it screwed up our whole relationship until he went to the doctor. And the doctor's like, oh my God, this one pill you're on is making this happen. And then we were
totally. But in the meantime,
it was such a head game between us. I was taking it personally. He was taking it personally.
Yes.
You probably could have spent $100,000 on therapy just from
totally, because
blood pressure medicine.
He starts feeling like he's inadequate. You start feeling like he's not really attracted to you.
Oh God,
it's amazing how this happens. And I see it every day. The spiral. And like, I feel like, oh, you know what? Let's do some like psychoeducation, get some more information. And all of a sudden everything sort of shoots into some perspective.
So what about these people though, that are like, not for me, like sex is not for me? Like so part of you is like, maybe it's not for you, but what if like people are really open-minded right now being like, it's not for me, but I kind of wish it was for me.
So it's not for me, but I kind of wish it was for me. It's very, very different, Molly, from it's really not for me and I'm not interested.
Okay. Let's talk to the person. Like, it's not for me, but for some reason I'm not turning off this podcast.
Yes. So I want to say to you that in my mind comes from a sense of fear, right? It is so scary, Molly, for somebody to think I'm broken. I'm never going to want sex. I'm never going to be good at it. I'm never going to know what I'm doing, but maybe I want to explore it. And that is so frightening to people. Like, it's so frightening, like I had a consult with a woman just a couple of days ago who got on saying basically, I'm like broken. I have no sex drive. I'm with my partner and we just don't have any kind of sex. And I just don't think, this is going on for years. There's really nothing we could do about it. And then after like 15 minutes of talking, I'm like, you are not somebody who is broken, who never wants sex. You actually do have sexual urges. Sometimes you're petrified. You're just petrified if you go down that lane and it doesn't kind of end up, exactly where you want it, or that, you start having sex with your partner and then there'll be pressure because he's going to really want to keep having sex with you, or you feel like, it's sometimes, you know this, Molly, it's sometimes scarier to open the box and see what's inside
and be rejected. I mean,
yeah,
that's the
exactly.
primary, the primary purpose of shame is to hold us back from rejection. So if you're so ashamed of your body, you're so ashamed of what people are going to think of you, and you don't challenge whether or not that's valid.
We're ashamed that you never had sex education, or ashamed that you don't know what everybody else seems to know, or ashamed that you don't even know where your freaking clitoris is. Do you know what I mean? It's we're ashamed that you don't understand what's happening when you're going through menopause. Like, it is just, women just walk around feeling broken, and to explore whether or not you can fix the brokenness is a big leap of faith. You have to really trust that the person you are talking to really can help you do that. And that is why I think so many women say, I'm not interested, done, finished, we're done, we're good. And that's
well, and I think
really
if you walk
sad.
around, if you walk around with those core beliefs, like so many of us have historically or do, like, and because I think, the food and the sex is so parallel, right? Like, I'm broken. I can never get well. I'm never going to be able to get this. I think it's very easy, if you feel that way about your relationship with food or substance, to have that bleed into your sex life is a no. It's a home run, right? For your fear to bleed right in and say, well, why in the world would I even think I could have a healthy sexual relationship with another person or with myself? And it's all lies.
And not only is it all lies, but you know how there are different doorways into healing?
Yeah.
If you can let down your guard enough to be real with somebody and actually start having a sex life with somebody, the care and love and concern and just connection of somebody touching your body, loving your body, you loving your body, you being able to be present in your body, like, that is such an entryway into healing.
And connection with something bigger. You want to get real spiritual,
Yes. Yeah. I think, I think the relation, again, I didn't get into this field because I'm so interested in body part A, fitting into body, slotting into body part B. I think that your sexuality just touches on so many pieces of your life and can be a healing. Like, you see in relationships sometimes, Molly, this I think is fascinating. Couples go to a couples counselor. I feel like I'm like beating up on a therapist, and I don't mean to, because I for a lot to other therapists.
I'm always beating up on other therapists.
Are you really? Okay, that makes me feel a little better. But anyway, a couple goes to a counselor and they're like, our sex life is in the toilet. And the couples counselor goes, oh, okay, well, why don't we work on your relationship and your communication, and then the sex will follow. And I'm like, you hear that, you get up and you run to the hills as fast as you can, because there's no indication that just because you are talking well and communicating well, that your sex life will necessarily improve. And why are we in society privileging conversation over physical connection? Because I would argue if you can get the physical connection back together again, the relationship might seriously improve. And I've seen it happen time after time after time. So, this idea that, sex is just one more thing in a relationship and not as important as, the intimacy and the communication is such bullshit. You know what I mean? It is just, in my mind, it is just as important and just as much of a gateway in. And I'm saying that with the caveat that I believe that every woman can have a full and satisfying sex life. You just need to even know how.
And every man and every
man, and every,
every gender and everything
in between. Correct. Exactly.
Across the spectrum of where you're sitting in this. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I treat so many people who come to me and then they get a little healthier and then they're like, I need to get divorced, or this ain't my person. And maybe they don't get divorced, but maybe it's not their person. So can we talk a little bit about not having to be like if someone's like, I'm not talking to my partner about having us in a healthy sex life. We've talked about that maybe being a great idea. If that's not your truth, or you're not partnered, talk me through getting into a healthier sexual relationship without a partner.
Got it. Okay. So I think the first thing you need to do is slow down. And
I think that's just like a great rule for life.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And learn your body parts, which is, a little more complicated for people, Molly, than you would think. And that would be exploring it with a mirror. There are really good, I'm just going to say there's some really good apps out there now.
Really?
Yes. There's Let's Mjoy. Mjoy is an app that has
with an M, like Molly, M Joy?
No, EM Joy.
Oh, let's enjoy.
Like enjoy, but with an M.
Okay, let's enjoy.
Yes, it's Mjoy. Just look up Mjoy.
Okay, look up Mjoy. I'm almost going to leave the podcast.
Or Beducated, but
Beducated? That's such a great app name.
It is. And they have these audio classes that you can listen to that walk you through learning your body, learning to touch yourself, learning to have an orgasm, learning to, learning body acceptance. Like there's just, I have a couple of collections on there about pain, like where pain.
Oh, you're on it?
And low desire. Yeah. So, they have many, many classes. And so I find those to be a great way for women to start now in terms of exploring. So that's number one. Number two, I am all about getting your brain activated again with fantasy, because I feel like we let our brains shut down. We shut down our brains, Molly. And your brain it's just in the sex game. Like your clitoris and your nerve endings are really important. And your brain is just as important. Like your brain, literally the brain and the nerve endings in your brain is just important. So women, I think what happens is we shut down the part of us that fantasizes. Like we feel guilty about it. We feel too fat to fantasize. We feel too
but I think this is so linked to what I was saying from a chakra perspective. Like, imagine, like Brene Brown writes about the research on this: imagination, creativity, fun, play, fantasy. Like these are essential in any world, but especially one where you're harming yourself. It's like this, I'm telling you, friends, this really might be what you're craving. I hate to tell you, but this is what's true.
So if you're willing to allow yourself to feel that craving, then I would say to you, you need to learn how to get your brain back in the game. And for some women, reading, there's another app called Dipsy, which is stories that are acted out by actors, like erotic stories. And you can pick, vanilla to way kinky, individuals to groups to like men, women, but you can pick exactly what you want. Or reading. A lot of women just really love reading, and that works for a lot of women better than classic porn. Although if you're into porn, go for porn. There's a website, Literotica, which has erotic stories about everything you possibly want. Start by letting
my best friend got into Outlander during COVID, and it changed her entire marriage.
Yeah, Bridgerton was like that. The first season of Bridgerton with the Duke.
For people
too. The second season, not so much, but the first, oh my God, with that Duke. Like I cannot tell you how many women were in my office talking about that Duke. Anyway. So I would say it is so important to reconnect to your brain. Now, ultimately you want to be able to create fantasies in your brain. And I'll tell you why, Molly, because your brain is going to create the best fantasy for Molly, right? Like in your brain, you know what you want the person, people, what they want to look like, what you want them to say, what you want them, right? When you're reading other people's, stories or listening to stories, to a certain degree, you're being held into a container of somebody else thinks is sexy. And you can take that container and turn it into the hottest, sexiest thing you ever thought of in your life.
I'm so in love with this, like taking your own power back, so that if you're with a partner, it's not so contingent on what they want, but that you're really contributing to what is sexy.
Oh my God. And
obsessed.
Fantasies, and I want to say fantasies are they're just, we have such a paucity of language for fantasies in English, because when I say fantasy to you, that could be something that sounds good and I want to actually try. It could be something that no way in hell, like having sex with Martians on the way to the, to Mars. Like that's not something I think is going to happen, but that could be a fantasy.
Yeah.
It could be something I don't want to talk about and I want to keep private in my brain, or it could be something I want to share with you and get us both all hot and bothered by it. So I wish we had more words for fantasy, because people get all tangled, but you should have access to all of those fantasies. And that is, I think, taking time, learning your body, getting access to your fantasies, and getting yourself a good vibrator is the roadmap to getting started on reclaiming your sex life.
I'm so in love with this. And I'm just going to say over and over, if you've decided to be brave enough to continue to listen. I'd say this sometimes to people about sugar when they're really, really no. I'm like, what if it worked? Like, what if this was the thing? And I say to you, if you are struggling with addiction, what if this was the thing? It's so possible. What if this was the thing? What if this being something that you're not willing to look at, not willing to give yourself the gift of, was the thing that really was fueling part of your binging or part of your restricting or part of your obsessing about other things?
And I want to say something else to the person listening who's feeling scared.
Yeah.
I know this is scary. I know. And there's probably a part of you that feels like it's never going to work. I'm never going to reclaim my sexuality. And I'm going to say to you, A, yes, you will. But B, it may take some time. You just need to be kind to yourself and you will learn something about yourself. No matter where this ends up, you will learn so much more about yourself and just feel proud of yourself for having taken a step.
I love it. I love it. So we want to buy sex points. That's going to be the first thing. What other ways can we like know you? I mean, I'm so lucky. I just have a phone relationship with you. I don't mean to brag, but I had to.
And I love my phone relationship with you. We just don't talk often enough, Molly.
Okay.
Anyway,
but when we do, it's so good. Tell me more.
I am at Dr. Sheva on Instagram. I do a lot of sex education. I really think of myself as sort of a social media educator. That's what I do on there.
Can I just be honest? I don't even follow you on Instagram. I mean, I am like, that is being amended.
I will blow your mind. It will totally blow your
excited.
Mind. And we should do it. We should do it live together.
We should do lots of things together. But
so yeah, and I'm also on TikTok at the Dr. Sheva because they threw off Dr. Sheva at one point. So I had to start from scratch at the Dr. Sheva. So, but I love social media because I feel like it's a great platform to sort of get the word out about so many of these things.
Me too. Well, I just followed you. I just love you. Sex points. So we're going to buy the book. We're going to follow you on Insta. We're going to get on your website. And we're going to be brave enough to hang with you all of the time.
And I will keep giving you positive reinforcement to keep looking at your sex life and don't get stopped by those dumb road bumps. And I'm telling you, everybody listening here, I laugh because I feel like the statistic is that, 43% of women have a sexual problem at some point in their life. And Molly, I'm telling you, the other 57% are lying.
See what I mean? This is her. This is her in her totality. Thank you so much for coming. I think we'll probably have you on again. I'm not even asking. I'm just sort of saying.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. And maybe we could do a live thing together or something.
I think we should do everything together. We can have a lunch. We can have a live. We can do it YouTube. Like who even knows? We can have a date. Who knows? Thank you. We love you. We love you. Hey, if you listen to the whole thing, I'm so proud of you. Also, we're having her on again. We're doing exposure therapy with Dr. Sheva. All right. Love you. Thank you.